An important part of being a software engineer is writing code that is easy to maintain. One of the best ways to do this is by breaking our code into smaller pieces. We already looked at how we can do this with functions, but sometimes a project can have thousands of functions. In this case, we need to break our code not just into smaller pieces within the file, but we need to break our code into multiple files. To separate our code into multiple files, we'll use the import and export keywords. To do this, let's go back to the very first time we created a variable, and we'll use the export keyword. What the export keyword is going to do is it's going to make this variable accessible in other files. So if we go back to our other file now, in this file, what if we want to log the variable? We'll say console.log, and then we'll say my variable from demo 8, and then we want to use that variable. I'll start typing the variable name, and my VS Code is giving me a suggestion to fill it out automatically. If I select that suggestion, you'll notice it adds an import line. To import and export, you'll use the import keyword, and then in the brackets, you'll specify any exports you want. If we were exporting multiple things from this file, you do a comma-separated list of all those exports. In our case, for now, we just want to import the one variable. And then we have the from keyword, and then the relative path between the file we're importing from and the file we're trying to import into. We run our code, and we notice we actually get multiple log statements. We notice hello world Blake, don't use var. And then we have my variable from demo 8, hello world. So the second log line is from this statement here. For the first log line, it's important to understand that when we import from a file, that entire file gets run. So if we look back at that file also had a console log statement. So this log statement would get run first, and then the execution would return back to this line of code and continue and log the new line. We can also import functions from other files. To do that, let's go back to the functions example we had, where we have function 2cm, and let's export this function. Once we export it, we can come over to our other file, and once again, we'll say console.log, and we'll say distance from demo 8, and we'll say 2 centimeter, and we'll say 3 feet, 2 inches. And when we run this, we should show that we're using the 2 centimeter function successfully as well. So here we got distance from demo 8, 96.52, corresponding to the 3 foot 2 inches. So to quickly recap once more, in our file where we want to make something available to other files, we'll use the export keyword. And in the file where we want to use those other members, we would use the import keyword. We'd specify what we want to import and the path to the file for importing it. Now for me, I almost never type out these import lines myself. I'll usually just start typing the function or the variable name that I want to access. I'll let VS Code give me some IntelliSense, and when I select it from the IntelliSense, VS Code will generally fill out the import for me automatically. Now in the vast majority of the demos that I do, when I do imports and exports, they're going to look pretty much in this exact form. However, there are other syntaxes available for doing imports and exports. The Mozilla documentation for these imports and exports is really quite good, and if you want to learn more, I'd recommend reading through the docs. We can see that there's quite a few additional syntaxes that can be used for importing and exporting. And if we scroll down to the forms of import declarations, what we covered is named imports. This is going to be the most commonly used. However, you also have default imports, namespace imports, and side effect imports. I should also mention that the import and export keywords weren't added until 2015. Prior to 2015, the keyword require was used instead. And I want to mention required because even though import and export are the best practices for what you should be using, it's very likely that you're going to come across the require keyword. And know that if you come across the require keyword, it's very similar to what's being done with import and export.